Hello, my name is Eden Luxon, and I should be writing some music, but instead I'm going to talk on the internet about some music that I like. I love learning about things in history that don't seem to add up time-wise. It's like real historical anachronisms, like when you find out that potatoes weren't brought over to England from America until the late 1500s by Sir Francis Drake, which means that whenever you're envisioning Henry VIII having a feast with one of his various wives, there ain't no mash and there ain't no roasties. I especially love musical ones, like the fact that Ralph Vaughan Williams, the composer, who wrote this banger, died in 1958, which meant that he was alive long enough to hear this banger. Or Dmitri Shostakovich, who was a Soviet composer, and he was writing music during World War II. In fact, he wrote his 7th Symphony whilst in Leningrad, whilst it was under siege. This man went to go see Jesus Christ Superstar, the musical, on Broadway in 1975. And apparently he is quoted as saying he wished he'd written it. But that's according to Andrew Lloyd Webber, so I don't know how verifiable that is. I also like the idea of cause and effect through history, like a butterfly effect going through history. Like how Archduke Franz Ferdinand's wife, Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, wasn't technically royalty, which meant that she wasn't allowed to accompany him on many of the sort of royal visits that he did. So he decides to inspect the army at Bosnia, as it's one of the very few occasions he is allowed to take his wife with him. And he rides in an open-top car with her, and they both get shot dead by a Bosnian nationalist. Something, World War I. I want to talk about the French composer Lili Boulanger, born Marie-Juliette Olga Boulanger in 1893, and she was an exceptional composer. Unfortunately, there is, and historically has been, a distinct lack of celebrated female composers, but Lili is one of the few. She was the first ever female winner of the Prix de Rome, the sort of big French art prize, basically. She won for her cantata Faust et Hélène in 1913, and she was only 19 years old. Now, unfortunately, she doesn't get much older. She suffered with various illnesses throughout her life, including a bout with bronchial pneumonia when she was an infant, leading all the way through to the suspected intestinal tuberculosis that took her life in 1918. She was only 24 years old. She travelled to Italy as part of her winning the Prix de Rome, but unfortunately due to her various illnesses, she had to return back to Paris. Then the First World War broke out, but she kept writing until the very last year of her life. In fact, 2 of my favourite pieces by Lili Boulanger were composed within that last year of life. Her 2 orchestral pieces, D'un matin de printemps, I think that means like the morning of a spring morning, I think we'd say it in English, and then also D'un soir triste, which I think is sort of like a night dance, I guess, of her night dancing. 2 beautiful pieces written in the last year of her life. Now, Lili's death leaves her older sister and wildly talented composer, conductor, pianist Nadia Boulanger bereft and distraught. Nadia is known to be one of the most prolific teachers of the 20th century, owing in large part to her bereavement. And a lot of people argue that her abandoning of composition came from the death of her sister. And she abandoned composition to pursue education and educating. I mean, she still performed and conducted. She became the first female conductor of many orchestras, including the Halle, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, the London Philharmonic Orchestra, even the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. This lady left a trail of female firsts in her wake. Now, she taught many famous students, including Elliott Carter, Aaron Copland, Philip Glass, Astor Piazzolla, and many more, including one Mr. Quincy Delight Jones Jr. Now, I've had the great fortune of seeing Quincy Jones live in concert. In fact, well, it wasn't completely true. I saw his 80th anniversary prom in the 2016 prom cycle, and he came out to conduct the very last piece, which is pretty great. It was pretty crazy. Everyone loves Quincy Jones. Quincy began his professional career as a composer, composing big band music and jazz music, and then arranging jazz music, including working with Frank Sinatra. He became wildly successful and then moved on to producing, and he produced 3 of the most influential albums of all time: Off the Wall, Bad, and Thriller, all by the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. Now, producing 3 of the biggest albums of all time wasn't enough for Mr. Quincy Jones. No. He decides to move on to producing TV and film. He goes on to produce The Colour Purple, the Steven Spielberg directed flick, and he also wrote the music for the film as well, and he credits himself as unleashing Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey onto the wider audiences. Later on, he goes to produce TV shows, one of which is The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Now, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air starred up-and-coming rapper Will Smith. Quincy, the story goes many different ways, but one of the stories is that Will Smith had gone to a taping of another show and met Medina, and Medina took him to a party at Quincy Jones's house, and Quincy Jones made him audition on the spot for the role, and he got it. This role leads Will Smith down the path to movie stardom. He stars in Independence Day, Bad Boys, Men in Black, Shark Tale. Whilst working on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith met a woman who unsuccessfully auditioned to play his girlfriend on the TV show. Her name, Jada Pinkett Smith. Jada Pinkett at the time. Eventually they married and she became Jada Pinkett Smith. They had 2 kids and they had a fairly open relationship, I would say. A lot of their private life out in the public, a lot of speculation, a lot of stuff. Don't want to get into it. That's one of those sort of risky downsides of being mega famous, is that just everyone knows about your private life, which I think is a massive shame, to be honest. Now, Will Smith goes through peaks and troughs in his career and eventually acts his socks off in a movie called King Richard, in which he plays the dad of Venus and Serena Williams. This role ultimately leads to him getting his Oscar nomination for Best Actor in a Film, and he subsequently wins this at the 2022 Academy Awards. The host of the 2022 Oscars, Chris Rock, an amazing comedian and actor in his own right, makes a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, which promotes ire within Will Smith, who walks onto stage and slaps Chris Rock right in the mouth. This becomes one of the most infamous and talked about pop culture moments of the 21st century so far. Now, let's make our way back to Lili. If Lili doesn't die, Nadia doesn't move on to teaching, and she doesn't teach Quincy Jones, and Quincy Jones doesn't become wildly successful and doesn't produce the TV show that provided Will Smith with his breakout role. He doesn't meet Jada Pinkett Smith, he doesn't get to the Oscars in 2022, and he doesn't slap Chris Rock. Isn't that kind of crazy? You know, many of these events could still have been canon, but I think it's really interesting to see a potential butterfly effect through history. I recently watched the season 13 finale of Bob's Burgers, one of my all-time favourite shows. This episode shows Louise, the youngest of the Belcher children, give a presentation at school about a historical hero. The hero Louise has chosen is Amelia Earhart. Now, Louise is dismayed that Amelia Earhart never actually succeeded in her goal of circumnavigating the globe in a plane, becoming the first female to do so. Now, Louise's mother, Linda, reassures Louise and says that she's really happy for Amelia Earhart's mother, who produced a daughter who can inspire her daughter to do whatever she wants. Linda says, and I quote, "Heroes don't have to be perfect, you know. They just have to make you think bigger about yourself somehow." We didn't see Lili Boulanger becoming a powerhouse composer of the 20th century. Maybe she would have become an international superstar. Maybe she would have gone into movies, gone to the Oscars herself. She might have become an Oscar-winning force of nature musical phenomenon, tearing down walls as she goes. But unfortunately, she dies in 1918. Canon. But heroes don't have to live long lives to make you think bigger about yourself. Her death ultimately led to some of the 20th century's biggest artistic and musical achievements, as well as the occasional internet-breaking slap. Thank you for watching this video. I am also a composer and I love Lili Boulanger. I'm hugely inspired by her work and I suggest you go check it out as well. I hope one day that I can have even just a fragment of the talent that she had. Please go check out my music and check out some of my other videos on here and on TikTok and Instagram. Much love to you all. Peace.